Man, it has been so great so far. Thank you for everybody who has helped to make this such an amazing time and such an amazing service of worship already. Every few years, if you're paying attention in the news, there's always some sort of strange story that comes out about a person who has a very weird inheritance. They have left all of their money to their gerbil or their cat or something, and so they're trying to figure out, these poor lawyers are trying to figure out what, Princess McSparkleface is going to do with $10 million as a, 12-year-old cat. And we were laughing about that in my family, about the silliness of the inheritance, and we all agreed in my family there's just one thing that my two older brothers and I are going to fight over when my parents do pass, and that is the shower head. Now, this is the shower head. I don't know, for as long as I've been around, the shower head has just existed. I think, my great whatevers, carried it over on the boat with them from wherever. But this shower head, it's like a pressure washer. It just takes the top several layers off. It's not energy efficient. The earth hates it, but it is amazing. And we are fighting over it and who's going to get it. Right now, it's in one of the guest bedrooms in my parents' house. Which guest bedroom, you ask, because you're really invested in this? Thanks for asking. I wasn't going to go into it, but I will. When you go up the stairs to the top level of my parents' house, there's a guest room where my brother and his family stay, and a guest room where our family stays when we come and visit, and it's in the one over here, oddly enough. We're not saying anything, I'm just saying that it's over on their favorite child side. So we'll see what happens. But when we think about inheritance, I was really struck by this author, Russell Moore, in his book, The Storm-Tossed Family. He talked about inheritance more than just that, more than just the money that passes, the stuff that passes. In fact, the phrase he used I thought was so good. He said, in looking back at biblical times, and then the idea that he's carried on, at least in his own heart, his own family, is an inheritance wasn't so much a transfer of money or property. It was the cultivation of a way of life. So inheritance is not merely about receiving. Inheritance is inviting those who come after you to participate in the type of life that you have. Participate in what you see as valuable and good. It's wonderful this morning to have Emma's parents here. What a gift and a joy it is to have them help and lead. But they're not the only parents that are here. Dale's parents are here as well, and we are so thankful. They're from a little bit further western Maryland than this very, very western Maryland, California. But we are so grateful. And without bringing them up on stage and quizzing them, I think that I know both of them well enough, and obviously know their kids well enough to know that if we were to talk about inheritance and talk about what they wanted for their kids, for their families that continue on, what they would want is, one, for them to love the Lord, to give their whole lives to God, and then two, to use the giftedness that God had put in them in order for them to serve so that others can know that as well. Inheritance in that sense is an invitation to participate in what is already going on that God is doing. That's why it's so beautiful to have both of them here this morning, to be able to see, to be able to testify to what Emma always does, to what Dale's able to do, to those things which continue to bless us and help us and invite all of us to participate in what God is doing. This idea of inheritance kept coming to me as we talked about Gratitude Sunday. So why are we calling this Gratitude Sunday? Well, we're calling it Gratitude Sunday for a number of reasons. One, It is our early Thanksgiving potluck, and we are always so grateful for everybody when we come together and have a potluck. It is truly a special time. I will say this now, if you have not brought food, you are still invited to this potluck. We want you here, and we want you to come, and as long as you can get in line after me, it'll be fine. No, I'm just kidding. It's great. We want you here, and we want to participate. We want you to participate in the life of what we are doing. So the first thing we thought about is how thankful we are and how grateful we are for Thanksgiving and this time of year where we reflect on all of our blessings. But the next thing that sort of brought this together was the understanding and the faithfulness that you all have shown in this year paying off the fellowship hall. We no longer have a mortgage on the fellowship hall. And you all don't even have to look around to know that the people who started paying so many years ago, some of whom are already experiencing their eternal reward with Jesus. Some are in different states or different places. Some of us came in at the last second or the last few years and have only been a part of it for a little bit. But you all, with your dedication and your faithfulness, took the gifts that God had given you and you chose to make a priority in giving so that we could use this space to better serve our community and better point people to Jesus. Your willingness to do that is something that we celebrate. So after we're done in here with the service today, we're going to invite everybody who wants to come out here in the front yard, and we're going to have the burning of the mortgage. So we'll, because it's so cold out there, I won't give another sermon. We'll do a little quick thing, but we will have that. And part of why we're doing that is because we are rejoicing at God's faithfulness and provision. We're rejoicing, and we are saying thank you, God, for all that you have done, all that you have given to us, and we are also celebrating what God is continuing to do here amongst all of us. You see all the kids come up, and this question of inheritance becomes one that really matters. What are we inviting the next generation into? What are we inviting the next generation into? When it's Sonny and Ava's turn to lead, when it's Daniel and Owen's turn to lead, when Andy and Piper have to lead, what will our witness and our testimony point them to? Will they give their lives and all they have to Jesus and then allow Jesus to use their gifts to help their kids then better know and understand? That's the point of what we are trying to do, is we are trying to invite all into what we believe God is cultivating and doing and seeing. This faithfulness that we have inherited from all of those who have worked so hard here at College Parkway, that is part of the treasure we want to say thank you to God for. That's part of the treasure that we want to understand and value as inheritance and then pass on in a meaningful, powerful, faithful way. So how do we do that, right? Because again, very pastor answer right there. We're just going to pass that on faithfully. Great, let's go eat some mashed potatoes. No. What I want is for us to dig a little deeper and think a little more carefully about that. And part of what I want to do thinking more carefully about that is to dive a little bit into that scripture that Bob read for us of Jesus walking on the water. Jesus, in chapter 14 of Matthew, you see all sorts of different things happen. The very first part of that chapter, Jesus hears about the death of John the Baptist, and he is reeling. He wants to get away. He wants silence and solitude to be with God the Father, and yet the people are hungry. And in his compassion toward them, he feeds the 5,000 plus so that they can know and understand and experience the good of God. And then in the part that we jump in, he sends the disciples away into a boat onto the lake. He dismisses the crowd and then he goes away alone. Many of these disciples were fishermen. These were not people who were not used to the lake, not used to lake life. And the storm that comes up is terrifying. Now, In Jesus' time, it was understood that land was good and water was where chaos and evil reigned. So as you were on the water, you knew that you were not in safe territory. There was danger. There were problems. There were struggles there. And these disciples have been rowing and fighting all night long. All night long. It is almost dawn. And when they look out, they see something, right? We know the story, so we know what's going to happen. So there at least is a temptation, my guess would be in some of us, to sort of Scooby-Doo this a little bit. Of a ghost, what? But that's not what you want to see or think here. That's not what's happening, because that lessens the power of what's going on. That's not what's happening. What's happening is, in the midst of the danger, in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the endless night that does not seem to end, where they are running out of energy, they are running out of hope, suddenly something even more evil, they think, shows up. They have been holding on by a thread, and now this is one more thing. I wonder if you can relate to that. You have been rowing and rowing and rowing. It doesn't feel like it's getting better. You're calling out to God, and you continue to feel like you're all alone, and the things that pile up continue to pile up until this thing, whatever this thing is, threatens to throw you under. The disciples are terrified. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It's a ghost!" And they cried out in fear, but immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Take heart, this sense literally, this idea of heart, this idea of cardio, fill your heart. Be full-hearted. And then this phrase, "it is I," literally translates, "I am," which, if you remember your Old Testament, is one of the most powerful names of God. Take heart, be full-hearted. Jesus says, "For I am God. Do not be afraid." Is it possible that the best way for us to use and cultivate the inheritance that we've been given is to listen to these instructions that the disciples heard in the midst of their storm, in the midst of their struggle, and use them ourselves? Take heart, be full-hearted. Trust in the good news of who God is, especially who God is that we see in Jesus, and do not be afraid. You don't have to fear in the midst of your storm. You don't have to fear in the midst of your struggle. You don't have to be terrified, even though you look all around you and all you see is problems, struggles, waves, things that don't look like they're going to have an answer and don't look like they're going to get any better. Don't be afraid. And Peter tests. I'm not going to be tricked by this ghost. You could say you are whoever you are. I'm not going to believe it. If it's really you, tell me to come out there. And Jesus says, "Come on," if he was from Georgia. Come on. Peter steps out of the boat. Is it possible that the best way for us to use this treasure, this inheritance, this gift that we've been given, the best way for us to say thank you, both for the faithfulness of God and the faithfulness of all of those who have given and served and loved before, is it possible that the most faithful thing we can do is be so full-hearted, so focused on Jesus, that we are willing to do the craziest thing possible that doesn't make any sense and step out of the boat when Jesus invites us to? When Jesus says, "Come on," that we actually take that step. What if that's the best way for us to show those who are coming behind us what it's like to follow God. That we are not going to be intimidated by the storm, that we are not going to be shaken, that we are going to trust and keep our eyes on Jesus. And we will model for them what happens when we screw it up. Because if you are going to present a faith to our kids that looks perfect, they are going to reject it. They can clearly see the brokenness in themselves, and if they can't see the brokenness in us in appropriate ways, they won't recognize how Jesus redeems those broken places. So, we not only show, yes, we took this step, you took that step, and the thing that I don't want you to forget or miss is that it's not like the sea suddenly calmed before Peter stepped out. The storm is still going on. You know that's the case because that's what he freaks out about out on the water. He steps out when it is still stormy, and he is walking on water as long as he is locked in to Jesus. But the second that he takes his eyes off of Jesus, he begins to sink. And what's the next piece of inheritance that we get? That even when we screw it up, Jesus does what? Immediately grabs us. We are never outside of his grasp. We are never too far away from him. What if the best way for us to live faithfully, what if the best way for us to say thank you on this Gratitude Sunday for all that God has done and all that we have inherited from those who have been faithful before, what if the best way for us is to live as honestly and as openly, as full-heartedly as we can, trusting on the great I Am and refusing to let fear control our actions, our attitudes, or our vision, and we step out in the faith that God is inviting us to, knowing that when we succeed and when we fail, God is right there with us. Will we have the courage? Will we have the strength? Will we have the faith to take the inheritance that we've been given and step out so that those who come behind us will love Christ too? That's my prayer and my hope and my desire as we say thank you on this Gratitude Sunday. Would you pray with me?